Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with a bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. The patch is out, and Twisted and Twilight has gone live. And of course with that, we've gotten a whole slew of changes to both existing factions as well as the primary beneficiaries of this DLC, of course, the Wood Elves and the Skaven, who have just gotten a whole bunch of new units and abilities and lords to take advantage of. However, I do think there are actually some abilities and changes that have kind of flown under the radar and might actually be making quite a difference, I think, in the way some of these factions can play. And for the Wood Elves, one of those changes that came in is the Wardancer dance rework. Before, Wardancer dances were essentially an ability. You just pop them, you got 30 seconds of whatever effect it was, and then you have to wait a cooldown for it to be usable again. This made it kind of difficult to use and meant it was really little more than a flavor pick. If you tried to use a dance, you had to be damn certain it was okay to take that debuff for the full 30 seconds. You had to be timing it correctly to really maximize the benefit and hoping your opponent didn't counterplay around it because they, of course, could see it. Now, however, you can simply toggle a stance. Woven Mist, the Shadow's Coil, and of course the Bladesinger's own dance are now simply stances much akin to, say, Grail Knights, or I should just say Bretonnian Knights' Lance Formation. It's simply an ability they have where they swap their stance. And I think that's opened up a lot of new tactical possibilities for the Wood Elves, especially with the Bladesingers and the Azrai Spears, the Spear Dancers. And as you can see here, in this build we are running, there are no new Elven units. We are actually focusing on really the reworked units with this composition that we're running against the Dawi. So going over the build here, for my Lord, I'm rocking a Rhine. Now, Rhine has always been a good Lord against the Dwarves. He's got, of course, the Cloak of Isha, which just makes him very beefy and tough for the Dwarves to kill. AP damage. He has AP missiles, which now he can throw on the move, so that's a big buff there. He got Fear and Terror, which is never a bad thing. And he used to have missile resist, but now he actually gets physical resist, which is great against the Dawi, who don't really have sources of magic damage outside of their characters. So, of course, Peak Gate Guard, but if you see Peak Gate Guard against Wood Elves, I'd be shocked. I would be genuinely shocked. Besides that, of course, he's got Frenzy. He's very mobile relative to Dwarves. He can really lay the smackdown on them. Alongside him, we are coming in with a Spellsinger of Life because this build is focusing on Wardancers. This entire build, our entire infantry line, this is turning illegal because we're running 10 Wardancers, but it is an entirely Wardancer-focused build. So, going over the composition here, the front line is being supported by the Spellsinger of Life. She's got Earthblood to heal the infantry spam, as well as Shield of Thorns to keep buffing their resistances. Once again, Dwarves don't have much magic damage, so 20% physical resist can be buffed to 42% pretty consistently with Shield of Thorns. We also do have, of course, Life Bloom to get that extra smidge of healing. And then for our final support unit here, Sisters of the Thorn. One of the things I was a little concerned about with Dawi is that potentially they could have heavy sustained arrow fire into the frontline fight. And if I want to keep Woven Mist active to preserve my troops against Rangers or Quarrelers, I will need to try to offset that loss of melee defense. And so I figured that the best way to do that is to bring the Bound Curse of Honorair on the Sisters of the Thorn. And of course we get additional Shields of Thorns on them as well. Plus they're not a terrible unit against the Dawi themselves. They've got physical resist, they've got poison damage, so they can poison your opponents, make certain fights swing harder in your way. And they are a cav, they can disrupt backlines a little bit. So figuring on that. Now front line here, not ideal against Dwarves in most situations. Azrai Spears. They obviously are essentially a very fast halberd unit with no armor. However, with Woven Mist, their missile resist goes up to 44%. And that means that combined with their physical resist, you've got 64% resistance. It can go into the 80s with a Shield of Thorns. So you can really shrug off Dwarven missile pressure if needed. And I figured, since Dwarves don't usually bring an elite front line, these ladies should be more than enough to crush whatever Dwarf Warriors and Miners they face, and then fast enough to overrun the backline. And so that is really what we are banking on here with this composition. And of course, with the stance, we can now stay in this missile resist form as long as we need to shrug off organ guns, bolt throwers, rangers, quarrelers, whatever units my opponent might have brought to shut these ladies down. They will do very little against Azrai Spears. I think only cannons will, and maybe a flame cannon direct hit will still shave off models. So it makes them very, very beefy against missile play. Behind that, we do have 5 Wardancers, vanilla variant. So these ladies, of course, non-AP, not ideal against Dwarves again, but they will crush Slayers, they will crush cheaper Dwarven infantry, and that is what really matters. You're not expecting Ironbreakers. If my opponent had brought, say, 1 Ironbreaker, which you will sometimes see, then we've got Orion for that, and we'll have to just wear them down. And that is it. Otherwise, just swarm and crump their backline. Now, for my opponent, he has gone with a boxy build. Not necessarily the most, I would say, try-hard composition here, but definitely a solid composition regardless. For his Lord Grumbrindle, who was, of course, reworked, he's now unbreakable, has much better combat stats, a smidge more expensive, but he does do magic damage, which is going to be a threat to all of my units, essentially, except, I guess, the Spellsinger, who doesn't want to fight Gromby anyway. He's got Foe Seeker, he's got the Flash Bomb, so I got to be careful about that debuff. Grumbrindle has no fear, which now buffs melee defense and makes units nearby unbreakable, though it's still 1 use. And he does have the Runehelm of Zufbar to keep his troops in the fray to the bitter end, because dwarves don't have enough leadership, so bring even more. Kind of surprised we're not seeing his Rune Axe, which debuffs leadership. I would think the Discourage effect would be more useful than extra leadership, but interesting choice there. Runesmith is alongside him, and Rune's got a major rework this patch. They now have range, so he can cast this 200 meters away. That will mean he can shift fights against Wardancers anywhere, really. Slow them down, snare them, and of course he's buffing his own troops there. And you get more leadership. So really, this is the Dawi Unbreakable build. Plus 20 leadership between these two characters means everything here is going to be sitting insanely high once fight is joined. For missile play, we've got 2 bolt throwers. We also have 3 units of Quarrelers supporting that. So a decent, though not overwhelming missile line. I do think it's usually better to bring Rangers just because of stock, but still definitely a threat to any missiles I may have brought. Frontline is a mix of Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors, and they are backed by Miners and Miners with Blasting Charges. So Miners with Blasting Charges usually the bane of the lightly armored Wood Elves because they're too cheap to shoot, but they will wreck any infantry in seconds. But hopefully we've got a secret weapon for that. And as you can see, the Wardancers are already closing the gap. Finally, there are 2 Slayers, of course, Dragonback Slayers and normal Slayers, always a threat, but we have Wardancers for those, so hopefully we can attrition them down. Now, as you can see here, we are closing the gap rather quickly. My opponent focusing his attention on Orion, looking to snipe him down with the bolt throwers, and I'm not doing a very good job dodging and kind of wasting javelin ammo there on the Longbeards. Should probably have turned his auto attack off, but yeah, I kind of forgot that he attacks while moving now, so yeah, he's just going to be kind of messing around there. Now, we did get a nice little surround. We're swinging wide with some of our troops over here. Sisters of the Thorn hiding in the back because I don't want them getting shot by bolt throwers. And over here, we are seeing the Wardancers closing the gap, and they're already taking arrow fire. But as you can see, it's a pittance. 600 or so damage on those initial volleys, and that's with some decent focus fire. So they're really not able to do very much. Now, we are going to see, as the fight is joined here, the Wardancers are going to start taking some blasting charges. And remember what their HP was at. Now, obviously, the poor Dwarf Warriors, they're getting blasting charges themselves. And do keep in mind, blasting charges did take a mild nerf this patch. But as they are exploded and blown to bits, they are still very much standing. Those satchel charge explosions would have traditionally knocked off probably half or more of their HP. Instead, they've got most of their models intact. Obviously, losing some HP right now to the Dwarf Warriors, actually. But they're mostly intact. They tank some blasting charges, and they don't give a crap. And now we are mincing through these troops. And I have started deactivating the Woven Mist, or I will do so soon. Though, as you can see, it waited a little too long here, so we will continue taking damage from the Dwarfs. Not ideal, but is what it is. In the meantime, Wardancers here looking to engage, swinging into the Longbeards, and getting this surround. The Wardancers swing into the Longbeards and looking to engage on the Slayers, as the Sisters of the Thorn try to sneak around, picking away at the Dragonback Slayers. We do see Curse of Honorary going down in this pocket over here, helping these troops fight a little more efficiently, though countered by flash bombs, so not that great. But a very high physical resist is definitely helping. We're just tanking through a lot of damage here. Wardancers, Azrai Spears pouring through and hitting the second line now with Orion in tow. So definitely not ideal for my opponent. Little mistake here, not you getting the Wardancers through fast enough. We're not getting all of them through, but you can see some of these ladies are pursuing the Dawi, blades drawn, and they will overrun you like Quarrelers. 80 armor or no, it's not saving you against very angry Wardancers. However, the Crossfire is whittling them down because Wardancers do not have that missile resist aura. They will not survive that well in that situation. Now, a bit of a misplay here with Orion. I probably should have been bouncing around trying to route these troops more efficiently. You can see we actually pivot here to engage the Dwarf Warriors and do get them routing a bit. We're going to hopefully tear route them and chain that off with more routes along the line. And already you can see that backline being compromised. Sisters of the Thorn dancing around merrily. Over here, Earthblood going down, healing the Azrai Spears as they just burn their way through. And of course, this is a cost-effective engagement. Yes, we have close to we've got 2,700 gold worth of resources here. But my opponent has Longbeards in here. He's got Miners. He's got Grumbrindle and Runesmith, very heavily kitted out. So my opponent probably has like close to 4,000 gold worth of troops in there. And they're all getting bogged down by a good 1,500 or so less. In the meantime, the Dragonback Slayers getting torn to shreds by Wardancers as they simply tear their way through the Slayers. And you can see they're just doing an excellent job here. These crazy ladies are really good against the unarmored Slayers. Warriors routing, and the press continues. Sisters of the Thorn bouncing around continuously, disrupting Quarrelers and all those units. Bolt Throwers trying to cause some damage, but really not able to do enough. And the Wardancers with Azrai Spears are just overrunning this line and breaking it left and right. And as the lines are compromised, the Dwarfs just cannot hold. There's not enough reserves, and slowly but surely they're getting worn down. The Wardancers are tearing through the artillery crews, tearing through the Slayers, attritioning down the Longbeards. Finally, Grumbrindle and the Runesmith have broken free to try to chase Ryan, but Ryan can always run away. He's got 55 speed, so unless I really screw up, he's not getting caught. And in the meantime, Azrai Spear just pouring through, getting on the backs of these troops, able to chew through these Miners pretty effectively. They hit rather hard. They do have 30 weapon strength, or 32 weapon strength, and most of that's AP. Not exactly great weapon. They're not exactly sword masters or something, but with those crazy spinning twists and kicks, they're just tearing a bloody path through the stunties, and they're not having a good time. Shield of Thorn's going down in the meantime. Once again, physical resist just for days, tanking through the Dawi damage, and Ryan just skedaddles. He doesn't care to stick around. He doesn't care to die. So we're running away here and kiting away from the enemy horde, and slowly but surely whittling them down. These Wardancers here, wiping out the Quarrelers as well as the Dragonback Slayers. Over here, this pocket will go down. The Miners and the Longbeards cannot hold without support. The Wardancers are going to win this fight, though. Perhaps a bit of a waste here. I probably could have pulled out at least one of these units and looked to re-engage elsewhere, so a bit of a micro slip-up. But as you can see, the line getting compromised, the Longbeards getting crushed, the Sisters of the Thorn smashing the Miners, and Runesmith here overextending and engaging on Orion, so not where he wants to be in life. All the Dwarf units are breaking, routing, and it's just a tiny pocket here. Some Quarrelers, the artillery crew, surprisingly still intact, and the Dwarf warriors here holding strong around Grumbrindle with that, of course, that very hefty, well, Grumbrindle has no fear right now, but with the leadership buffs as well, they're just going to hold for a while. Over here, Wardancers are going to start munching through these last of these Slayers. Of course, Slayers do hit pretty hard, but with Shadow's Coil, we should be able to negate much of their heavy melee attacks, so we'll be up to 63 melee defense. Slayers will struggle to punch through that, and they are just getting overwhelmed here. I'm going to see some naked Dawi getting torn to shreds by those beautiful ladies of the woods, and just getting staggered, diced and sliced, decapitated, and annihilated. So definitely not where these guys want to be in life. And as we zoom out here, you can see the Slayers just are not going to last. And look at that, Wardancers, 31 models still. They're just chewing their way through, doing a great job. And that's once again nice to be able to just keep Shadow's Coil up for as long as I please to munch through these Slayers. You don't need much melee attack to counter them, especially with your bonus for his infantry. But it's nice to have extra melee defense to not take that much damage. You can see a perfectly healthy unit of Wardancers here, up to 69 kills. Just having a field day. Orion over here trying to get cheeky charges in on the Runesmith, but the Dwarven Mass is holding strong. The Dwarven Infantry not so much. Sisters of the Thorn here diving into the Quarrelers, just trying to end this fight and remove the peripheral troops here. And it's going to be a little bit of cleanup in Aisle 9 now, as the obviously super fast Wardancers, 46 speed is no joke, are going to be running down the survivors. And you can see here we're removing the Runesmith, removing the infantry. The balance of power hasn't shifted completely yet, though now you do see the army losses kick in. Grumbrindle, of course, being unbreakable, is going to stand and fight here, so we're just going to have to take some time. He's got 125 armor, so even with... And he actually flash bombs us here, almost taking down Orion. The King of the Woods forced to flee, despite the massive advantage his army's provided him. But obviously his armor's down to about 90 right now with the exhaustion debuff, but that still means Wardancer will suffer. So rather than engaging him all at once here in a big blob, we're just going to wait here, sit tight, whittle him down one Wardancer unit at a time. And yes, he's going to rack up an insane kill count, but honestly, who cares? He's not going to be able to win at this point. And so it is Big Papa Dwarf here, standing alone, flailing around. Them mass changes ain't saving you against a horde of angry infantry, and getting sliced and diced into oblivion. And he does take a few of those war dance with him. That looked painful. But he is going to be eventually broken and destroyed. And it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory for the Wood Elves. So I think much more decisive than I would let on. Just look at these Wardancers. Insane Chevron gains. Able to just crush that front line and overrun the Dwarves. Almost entirely eradicating the Dwarven army. Only 23 survivors, and I think that was some of the early miners that routed. So, is this going to be some new meta against the Dwarfs? I don't think so. But I think there is potential to use units like Wardancers with Azrai Spears, even if a more limited amount, as a very effective front line against missile-heavy factions. And this even applies to factions that tend to bring cavalry or big monsters or units like that. You can bring them in support of your big stuff. You can support your large with your Wardancers and protect them against missiles initially. And then once the fight is joined, pop that melee defense back on and grind through quickly. And I think they definitely have potential there. And honestly, same with the Wardancers. This was the one unit that tended to use its dance every now and then, but I think now that you can permanently pop it against high melee attack, low melee defense units, I think they're going to be a much more effective pick. And I think it really shone in this game where we were just able to win out with some units in excellent condition by the end game. And of course, spamming resistance buffs helps. For my opponent, not necessarily the most competitive pick. I obviously would strip down some items on the Runesmith and the Big Papa Dwarf here. Obviously, the leadership items I think aren't worth it on Dwarves. And I think you could probably cut down the Quarrelers, make some room for an extra unit, and have like 4 Rangers instead of 3 Quarrelers. But besides that, it's a pretty standard-ish Dwarven build. This is definitely something you see fairly often on ladder. And now with Ethereal Reindeer, you do have to bring some magic damage, I think, as the Dawi. You gotta consider that possibility. So I don't find it that surprising that we saw Grumbrindle. And it got overrun. The mob of Wardancers is just difficult for the Dwarves to stop because none of their frontline troops can really beat Wardancers. And if you're able to shrug off those missiles, especially initially, you can then win the frontline fight and crush the backline. And I think it was really cool to see in action. Regardless, well played to Clayman here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. As usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments, and critiques down below. And I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.